It's like wasabi, right?
Okay.
It's like, if you're having sushi or something else with wasabi, it's fun to get like a really big piece
Hmm.
and then it hurts really bad, but then it stops hurting. And then at the end, you're like, that was cool. I want to do that again.
Hi, everyone. Kate here, and I am joined by my husband, David.
Hello.
We are going to be talking about a book that you just finished yesterday afternoon. As a favor to me, he read this book. And what book did you read?
I read Wuthering Heights by
Emily Bronte.
Emily Bronte. I get them mixed up still.
Oh, so you didn't know which Bronte
Yeah,
it was.
yeah.
Yes. Okay. I thought you were wanting us to finish each other's sentences. So yes, he read Wuthering Heights. I just thought now that he's out of graduate school, he has more of a brain space to handle reading fiction, and I really wanted to know what he was going to think of Wuthering Heights because it is very on my mind because it is one of the books I'm hosting as a read along during Victober. So I actually have not reread it for a couple years.
You read it once?
I've read it twice.
Okay.
Um, and this Victober will be my third time. Now I did read the first 30 pages a couple weeks ago when I filmed my Victober Read With Me video. Um, so if you had to say, it might be hard to say, but did you love this book or did you hate it?
I kind of hated it.
You kind of hated it. So I don't hear all that many in between opinions of Wuthering Heights. It seems to be people either love it or hate it. So maybe if we can, let's try to keep this first section of the video spoiler free. So what did you think overall of Emily Bronte's writing style?
Well, I actually liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I found myself sucked into the book more than I have in a while. Certain writers, you never forget that you're reading a book. You're like, okay, what's going to happen next? But sometimes you get pulled into the story. I definitely did get pulled into the story for stretches of time.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, you wanted to talk to me. I just
Yeah.
because I just really, I was in it, and it would have been taken an effort to get out and actually have a conversation with a person.
I said, how many pages do you have left? And he was like, and then you just looked back down at your book. So I thought, I'll leave him because I know what it's like.
I figured you would understand.
Yes. And plus, you were doing this as a favor to me reading this book. So I thought, I'll leave you. So you really liked the writing style.
I did.
And
yeah.
you felt she set out and kind of accomplished maybe her goal with, because I think that's some people's litmus test for whether someone is a good writer. Did they accomplish what they set out to write?
I don't really know what she was trying to do.
Maybe that's a different question,
Yeah,
though.
could be.
Okay. What did you think kind of the cast of characters?
Well, I mean, it was good. There were interesting characters. I thought there were some people missing.
Really?
Yeah, and there was a character type that was missing.
Oh, okay. So what was the character type that was missing?
So there was, as far as I could tell, there wasn't a hero.
Right.
And I know that, not everything has to hew to a specific storyline or archetype or something like that, but there wasn't really any one character who I admired.
Yeah.
There were maybe certain characters would have some traits that I was like, well, okay, that's cool. But there was nobody where I was like, wow, that's somebody I can, kind of look up to, or that's somebody I can maybe try to imagine myself relating to and think like they're gonna really make things better.
And so is that a requirement for you out of a story? You have to have someone you kind of would love to embody?
I think it is, and I don't think I knew that it was, but in reading a story where it was lacking, then yeah, I felt very unsatisfied by that.
Did you feel a little bit manipulated or cheated as the reader?
I'm not sure if I felt manipulated or cheated, but I did feel like I was like there was tension, and the tension did eventually resolve in some form, as every story probably does, but it didn't really do it in a way that I found satisfying.
Yeah, there
So
wasn't.
yeah, I guess I did feel cheated.
Okay, okay. And then the actual layout of the story. Do you enjoy that aspect where it's a story within a story, someone telling you about
Yeah,
something that happened?
yeah, it's good.
I thought that
Yeah.
was cool. Like, I think the whole, even if you don't really like the characters or kind of the outcome in a book, I think you can enjoy this. What is it called? Frame narrative. That's what it's called. Um, Now, I will say too, I think most of the time I need a character that I would want to embody when reading a book, but for some reason, Wuthering Heights is the exception. And we have heard me talk about Jude the Obscure, and that's why I couldn't like that book. And I would argue then that there is redemption at the end of this one, as opposed to at the end of Jude the Obscure, there's not. So why don't we go to the talking about specific characters?
So this is the spoiler alert
This
part.
we'll do the
So everything
spoiler
here on
section.
out is don't watch it if you don't want to be spoiled.
Yes,
right?
and I'll put a timestamp so people
okay.
can see.
Okay.
Fancy timestamp. So the different characters. Basically, let's start with the first generation. So who all do we have? We have Hareton Earnshaw, Heathcliff, Kathy, and then Linton. What is Linton's first name? The male.
You know, I don't
Linton.
remember.
Okay, and then his sister.
Isabella?
Yes, that's right. So I'll put in the screen, I'll put his first name. Okay, so
You're missing one.
And who else?
Someone very important, right? Hindley.
Oh, Hindley.
Hindley
Yes.
Earnshaw. That's the older brother of.
Yes. So wait, Hareton is his son?
Yeah.
You can tell it's been a couple years since I read it. Okay, so yes, Hindley Earnshaw in this older generation. So it starts out, it's not that dark, right? When it starts out.
No, it's kind of touching. Hindley and Catherine's dad shows up with this, kid that he found in the streets of Liverpool, right, or something like that.
I think that sounds right.
And,
a little waif.
And they really, the way they write about him, like, is very unflattering and definitely has racist overtones. They kind of like refer to him in these sort of B style.
You think
phraseology.
The way that the characters treat him, or the way that Emily Bronte?
Well, a little bit of both, but mostly the characters. Like the characters who are repelled by him are repelled because he's this little this little dark thing, or something like that. It's kind of,
they view him as an it, not another human being. Yeah, that is something that you don't see in a lot of Victorian literature. So that's why I think it's really interesting to discuss, because you're right. It's he's so different and exotic, aka different from them. So that is a very interesting aspect. So yeah, and then did you like the bond that Kathy and Heathcliff had?
So let's see. Their bond emerges because I think it emerges primarily. So there's the first phase, the phase where the old man Earnshaw is around, and he's spoiling Heathcliff, kind of ignoring his son Hindley.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also, I think, spoiling Catherine, right? To some
Yes.
extent. But he's really partial to Heathcliff. So he spoils Heathcliff for a few years.
And we don't ever get a clue why he is just ignoring his son, do we?
I think he didn't like that Hindley reacted badly to Heathcliff.
Oh, it was like he saw this new aspect of his character that he hadn't seen before, maybe?
Maybe, or I think in his mind he just wanted to bring home this kid and have the kid. He felt bad for the child, and he wanted his family to just like wrap the child up in love.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what he saw, and that made him mad, and so he got overly partial to Heathcliff, partially because of that. And he did reject his son because his son was not doing what he wanted him to do.
Right.
And he felt like Heathcliff was being mistreated.
So then Hindley has daddy issues.
So Hindley has daddy issues, and then old man Earnshaw dies.
Mm-hmm.
whereupon Hindley becomes master of the house.
Uh-oh.
And then he starts treating Heathcliff pretty badly, and
Mm-hmm.
Catherine middling.
Yeah.
But Heathcliff really badly. And is that where the friendship between Heathcliff and Catherine really starts?
See, now I'm feeling like I'm definitely looking forward to my reread because I thought it was sooner than that. I kind of, the way I'm remembering it is that as soon as she saw him, it was like this, they had instant chemistry. They were drawn to each other immediately. But maybe I've changed the story
They were
around
really
in my
young.
mind.
Like I think
were like
Heathcliff was like
6 and
7 maybe when he got picked
Yeah.
up from the street. So they don't know how old he is.
Right. So I guess the way I had remembered it, she was immediately drawn to him, but that's not the read that you had on it.
I don't remember exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I thought they were friends from the jump. Like
Okay.
And that's what makes it such an intense story, is it was just this unbelievable
I wouldn't be surprised
connection.
if when you reread it, if you find that you don't like Catherine as much as you remember liking her. And Heathcliff.
No. I didn't. So, okay, we were discussing this at bedtime, and I have some nuance to what I think about it.
Okay.
It's not that I like them.
All right.
But I have sympathy for them, and I pity them because of the household they grow in. One, she grows up without a mother, and that's a really hard thing on a girl.
Right.
And Heathcliff, we have no idea what happened to him the first years of his life. Like, no clue. So who knows what abuse he was in there. And then he ends up in a household where he does have this ally in Catherine. Or I guess he calls her Kathy. We're going to confuse people talking about the different generations. So we'll just refer to the older generation lady as Kathy.
Oh, so older one is Kathy.
Or you think we should call older one Catherine?
I don't know. Sure, Catherine. Older.
Okay.
I don't know.
Older one is Catherine. Younger one is Kathy. So.
Kathy 1, Kathy 2.
Sure.
All right.
Okay. So Kathy 1 grows up without a mother and then has a tyrant of a brother after her father dies. And her father, who, like you said, he wasn't as harsh on her as he was her brother. But then Heathcliff has no positive male role model after, Kathy and Hindley's father dies. And what is he supposed to do with that? So I guess I just really take into account, I think they kind of have PTSD from their childhood. And then there's no, okay, Victorian society, although I think this is set pre-Victorian era, because this book was only published in 1847.
The Victorian era starts when?
1837, and I think it's supposed to be set before.
I'm
going to have to fact check myself, and I'll post the year if it is in fact set in the Victorian era. But I will just say, kind of, it would go along with the narrative of society then repressing emotions. And so they have this traumatic childhood and unhealthy learned behaviors, and it's never dealt with. And then they have to go into adulthood, and it's really hard to be a grown-up, and they don't have healthy tools to take with them into adulthood. And so it's not that I like them, but I have a lot of sympathy and pity. I pity them. And I just find myself, because of Emily Bronte's marvelous writing, I'm extremely invested in the story and knowing what's going to happen to those characters. So, we did not yet talk about the Lintons. So do you have any opinion on the Lintons, or just kind of indifferent?
I want to talk about Kathy 1 and Heathcliff more.
Okay,
That's okay. So I understand what you're saying, and I do pity them to some extent. But they do annoy me partially because they have the same sort of sense of groundless self-superiority and self-satisfaction that the Bennett sisters, not the Bennett sisters, the
Bingley sisters.
The Bingley sisters
in Pride and Prejudice
have, which is this sort of, well, I can't quite put my finger on it, but I know I'm better than these other people. And so Heathcliff and Catherine, they're superior to the Lintons, or to the Linton family.
Yes.
They just are, because...
It's like, it's such a joke. Like, look at them being in the parlor. And...
Right. They feel things more deeply or something. It's not really clear what it is. I mean, Heathcliff is physically more fit, and energetic than Linton.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe that's the origin.
Yeah, and they are. I think there is a real wildness to Heathcliff and Kathy
Sure. Sure.
and I think it is when it comes down to it. Also, the whatever our souls are made of, they're the same. They are true kindred spirits.
Sure, they're
they
kindred
get
spirits.
each other.
They like to hang out outside and play rough.
Yeah, they do.
Like, and the Lintons like to be inside.
They're ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
Yes.
So maybe that's why they're superior, but it irks me.
I totally get that.
Because the thing is that we all do it. We just pick whatever it is that we have, whatever traits we happen to have. We just assume that those are the most important traits.
Yes, absolutely.
And then we get to feel good about it. And so when I see it in these characters, I go, oh, I recognize that. That's in me too, but it's tiresome.
Yeah,
It doesn't.
I get tired of myself.
I do, and I get tired of people who act like that. Like, oh, I'm so great because what? I don't know why. Why are you so great?
Yes, because of this one virtue.
Right. So that's what I feel like saying to Catherine and Heathcliff is like, okay, come on, yeah, you're pretty cool, all right, but you're not better than other people.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's interesting. That's something I hadn't cognitively processed, but that is true. That is definitely a glaring personality trait.
You'll notice flaw. It because in their moral calculus, they place each other as more weighty than 20 other people.
Yes.
So even if it meant, like, let's say if it meant ruining somebody's life.
Yes.
But it meant that they got revenge on someone like them.
Yes.
Or that's the kind of game they're playing. Other people are just pawns, and they're really the valuable ones.
Yes. So then the Lintons.
Sure.
What do you kind of think about them?
Well,
they're a little vanilla.
They're not very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do. Yeah, they're not very impressive. They're not very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Isabella turns out to be pretty interesting.
She does.
She's got a lot more fire in her belly than you immediately suspect.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so then let's go to the next generation, which interestingly is where the book starts. That's what I think is fascinating. And who's the guy at the beginning who's telling us the story? He's totally superfluous in the story, I can't remember his name.
He's named like a couple of times.
But he goes upstairs and he stays in the room, and Kathy's climbing through the window.
And he pushes her out. He has to push her out.
He does.
But he's sleeping, or is he?
Yes, seeing that is really trippy for you to stay in this guest bedroom and someone's name is written all over the bed. Really unsettling. But he has nowhere else to go. And so then we have these, which makes it even more confusing, these children of the former generation. So Hindley Earnshaw's son, which I made the mistake, I flip-flopped their names. So he's Hareton Earnshaw. And then we have Heathcliff Jr. And then Kathy, who is
Kathy 2.
Kathy 2, who's the daughter of Kathy 1 and Linton. And then, and Heathcliff Jr. is the son of Isabella Linton and Heathcliff. Is there someone else?
No.
Okay.
No, just the servants.
Just the servants, yes. Is it Joseph? Which you were laughing out loud in one scene with Joseph. Can you remember it enough to tell it?
Yeah, so Joseph, this is fairly early on in the chronology of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And lightning strikes the house, and he falls down on his knees and says, "Oh, Lord, remember how you spared the patriarchs, Noah and...
Abraham, maybe?
I don't know, whichever one was... We'll just say Noah and the other guy.
Uh-huh.
And did not smite the righteous down with the ungodly. So pass over me and just smite the unrighteous people here." So he thought like God was smiting the house because everybody in it was really evil, but he wanted to remind God that he was, don't strike me down, just the rest of them, take the rest of them.
I'm not as psycho as the rest of them.
I'm not a sinner like these people.
But I was just very taken aback because I was not expecting him to laugh out loud while reading Wuthering Heights. But that is a funny part that I had forgotten about. Our visitor, he stumbles upon a very dysfunctional scene, and he can't even tell who is with who. He thinks at first that Heathcliff, the dad, is married to Kathy 2. And she is, in fact, married to Heathcliff Jr., right?
Who's dead?
Who's dead?
He was dead at the beginning.
He was dead at the beginning. He's dead at the beginning?
Yeah.
Then who's the sickly one?
Well, that's Heathcliff. But I'm
So
saying
he's not dead
at the beginning
beginning
of the story, he is dead.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
See, I need to reread this clearly. Okay. What kind of was this? This was the worst part of the story to you.
I mean, so this guy shows up at this dysfunctional house, and he gets like menaced by their dogs, and nobody really thinks to call the dogs off, and so he has to jump up on the table, and they're like trying to maul him.
I forgot that.
And then eventually people come in, they're just sort of bad tempered, like, oh, just, stop that to the dogs, and the dogs eventually stop. And they're just amazingly rude to him, and he gets upset, so he decides to leave, but there's a snowstorm, and he gets hurt somehow. And
and he can't walk on his own. He knows he needs
right, because he would
stay.
get lost definitely get lost in the snows and perish.
Yes.
And so they really, really begrudgingly put him up for the night, but they put him in this like haunted room.
Yes.
So I really at the start I had negative sympathy with all of the denizens of the house right at the beginning. And maybe by the end of the story, I didn't hate all of them.
Except Heathcliff.
I didn't hate all of them.
Okay.
I'm not saying that I.
No, I know. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
You still hated
there are a
Heathcliff.
couple of them in there that maybe I didn't hate.
Yes. So we did touch briefly yesterday. We were talking about, do you think it was actually Kathy's ghost? Because here's the thing. He didn't know that family. He goes in and he stays in the room. If it wasn't her ghost, how on earth would he imagine something so specific?
I think in the logic of the story, I do think it was her ghost, and I think Heathcliff let her out.
He did that. That to me, that is just so. I don't even know the right word to use for it, but there's got to be some really great word.
Well, it's reckless for one thing.
Well, reckless, but I mean, demented. To dig up someone's bones because that is how much you miss them. You want their body has rotted, and so it's her bones that he digs up. That's how.
Yeah, there was some weird thing like he wanted the bones. I couldn't tell this part, but when Linton died, Linton 1, he was to be buried next to his wife. Mm-hmm. And Heathcliff, he wanted to do something like mix the bones up or something. So
with
that
Linton's?
Something. He made them dig things up because he wanted to do something squirrely with the bones. And then while he was there, he's like, I want to look at Kathy 1. I want to see her. And he said, she looked the same. Which... I don't know.
He's unhinged.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
You don't look dead past a year.
Yeah. I mean, she was only dead for 18 years.
That was 18 years that went by.
Yeah, because 16 years.
Okay.
Because Kathy too was born on the same day that her mom died.
Okay.
And she's about 16 at the start of the story.
You know what that makes me think of, though, that really happened was one of the pre-Raphaelites, Dante Gabriel Rossetti. He buried with his wife one of his manuscripts that was unpublished. And then, after she had been buried like a year, he was like, JK. And he exhumed the body, took the manuscript, and then had her reburied. Yeah. Okay. So, but, sorry, I'm just thinking. I do also think, though, in the era we are living now, we are the least comfortable with being around, with being
Sure.
aware that we are bodies
Sure.
and dead bodies.
Okay.
And even it was common for some people then. I know Thomas Hardy and so, he's a famous figure that I know did this, but he had his heart buried separately from his body. It was a thing.
Was he a vampire?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
So I do wonder then, I know this about Dante Gabriel Rossetti. Was this somewhat common? I mean, grave robbing was a thing too, but I still think this novel obviously was extremely shocking when it was published. So that's interesting to me that a lot of times I think people think of Victorian stories sometimes as, oh, there's no way it could shock me as much as a modern book. But nowadays, the digging up Kathy's bones is so incredibly shocking. Um, okay. Then we get to, I touched on this briefly earlier. I feel that there is some real hope for the next generation turning the tide on the track that their family has been on. And, I think pretty much all of us can know someone that had a sad childhood and has either kind of picked up unhealthy behaviors that they saw as a child, or then we know people that have kind of a pendulum swing reaction and then have a different set of unhealthy behaviors. But then we also know people that I'm like, wow, you are super functional and you had crazy parents. Or, you had these crazy things happen to you. And I have hope for them. I genuinely think they might do okay.
Yeah, oh yeah, I think they'll do well.
And so that to me really I think you're downplaying that. You're like, yeah, they'll do well. But that to me is a huge deal. Like, look at everything that has happened. And there's something to me that is incredibly poetic about the story where I love to feel all the feelings when I read a book. And so I love to go through all of that. It's very cathartic for me. And then I feel like you gotta come up for air at the end. And it's really, really beautiful. And in fact, I want to read the last sentence. So the last sentence, which is basically a paragraph, says, I lingered round them under that benign sky, watched the moths fluttering among the heath and harebells, listened to the soft wind breathing through the grass, and wondered how anyone could ever imagine unquiet slumbers for the sleepers in that quiet earth. And I think they know they don't want to. They don't want to run the show the way things have been run. And I feel like there's a lot of love at the end.
Yeah, yeah. That's the way things are at the end is I'm actually okay with. It's how we got there, how you get there, that's a little bit disappointing to me. When I think about it, in terms of active characters who do things and then the plot sort of changes around them, I think that Heathcliff is the only one.
Oh.
He's the only one who does things and then things happen. Everyone else is in a reactive mode, including Kathy, number one.
I was going to say, because even the whole way she meets Linton is by an accident, by the dogs that come out and start chasing her, and then they hear her screaming.
That's right. So the thing is, and so we're fully in spoiler. We've been in spoiler mode for like a while. So the thing is it's not that anyone came in and saved the day. It's that Heathcliff basically ended up screwing himself over, and then he couldn't function anymore. And he couldn't be evil. He eventually got blunted. Like he was like a sharp tool that only knew how to do one thing, which was cut everybody's life apart. And then he got blunted, and then he couldn't do that anymore. And then everybody lived happily ever after.
But did you like that or dislike that about it, or you're not sure?
I think maybe that's what she was saying, and that's unfortunate. Like I guess you could have a story, you could have a real life thing work like that, where really there aren't any bad guys, there aren't any good guys. There's just bad guys, and then if everybody lives happily ever after, it's because the bad guys screwed up somehow. And they blew themselves up. Right. It would be like watching an action movie and there was no hero. There were just like the terrorists, and the terrorists were like they had a dirty bomb, like rigged up under the Eiffel Tower, and then at the end they just like make a mistake and they blow themselves up, and nobody else, and everybody lives happily ever after. That would be the feel of it.
So okay, also you need a hero in a story. You think basically any good story will have some kind of a hero.
I don't know. I haven't read enough to really say that, but I do know that when you have a villain, you want a hero when you have a villain.
Yes. When you have an antagonist, you want a protagonist.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no protagonist in this story.
There's no Heathcliff has no equal.
Yes.
He strides like a titan.
But you know what, you say that, and I start smiling because I just love
phenomenal. Sure, he's a phenomenal
the intensity of the story. And also, can we just take a moment to step back? And I heard this story about Emily. I had heard it on the Bonnets at Dawn podcast, but then I reread it in the Bronte's biography that I'm currently reading. And if you did not know which sister had written Wuthering Heights, I feel like you would read this story and be like, yep, that's the one. So Emily pulled two dogs apart from each other that were fighting. And she got bitten in the process. And she was like, oh, this better not get infected. You know what? Forget it. Just before it does, I'm going to cauterize the wound. I'm going to cauterize the dog bite. And then she started to get really sick and waited until she was better to tell her family what she had done. I feel like just knowing that anecdote, you'd be like, yep, that's the one that wrote Wuthering Heights.
I wonder if cauterizing the wound is an effective way to stave off infection.
I think it is. I mean, you would kill so many skin cells.
You're going to kill a bunch of stuff, but you might seal the bacteria in.
Ooh.
You know, if it had gotten dirty enough.
What if it was like it had just happened?
I kind of think that you'd be better off with alcohol.
Yeah.
And cleaning it out thoroughly.
It seems a little excessive.
Yeah. And they had alcohol, you know, I'm not saying like, they should have taken antibiotics.
Yeah.
What were they thinking?
No, they did, yeah.
Yeah.
So you were just extremely happy for Heathcliff to die. And I quote, you said, I want Heathcliff to die so bad.
That makes me sound like a psycho.
Well, no, Heathcliff's the psycho, and it's just
he was horrible.
In the story,
horrible. And he's interesting.
He's horrible.
He is interesting, but he really is like. It's not the way his ability to hold a grudge and pass it on to unrelated bystanders is unparalleled.
And pass it on to unrelated bystanders. That's very true. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of books that I read and they just feel blasé. And this burns brightly.
It wasn't boring. It was not boring.
It was not boring. So he did last year, and we were going to film a video and never got around to it. You read Jane Eyre, so you definitely prefer Jane Eyre.
Yeah.
Yeah. You really like Jane Eyre, right?
I did. You know what? I think I liked Wuthering Heights.
See, unpacking it. You needed to let all the emotions out as you read it.
I can't not like a book I hate so much.
But see, you say that, and I would I believe you. I'm just saying, I would think then I would finally be like, I guess I liked Jude the Obscure, but it's also the author's message of that I didn't like.
Think about that. I just realized. I mean, I was so far from bored the entire time.
It's suffocating as you're reading.
So
it.
I think this is a book actually. At the end, I think I'm going to say, I hated it so much I liked it.
This is so exciting. I was not expecting that statement to come out of you.
Yeah, I just realized that. Because I just realized, like, when I was reading Jane Eyre, I didn't feel as, like, hyped up.
Right.
You know?
Oh,
and then it made me realize, like, when's the last time that I actually have felt this intensity while reading a story?
I've not seen you that, like, I know you, like, you read Harry Potter, but that's, like, cozy, nostalgic reading, and I mean, although in the time that we've been married, you've just been busy being a student. And so your kind of relaxation is either P.G. Wodehouse reading or nonfiction reading. That's typically. So maybe also you were just really enjoying reading a good fiction book.
Maybe.
So I do have a question now, and this is the most important question I will ask the entire video.
All right.
Although the answer definitely won't be no now. So when you were saying you hated Wuthering Heights, I was panicking because I thought, is this going to taint your enjoyment of Kate Bush's Wuthering Heights?
Oh. Well, no.
Perfect.
Because I don't hate it.
This is
because I like Wuthering Heights. I do like it.
This is a very surprising turn of events. If you had a daughter, would you let her marry Rochester?
Well, I think that Rochester's another who doesn't have many people that he respects.
That is so true.
It's like he's another one who doesn't have a foil character. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't have someone who's like him but different.
Well, I thought a foil though was kind of the polar opposite. I have heard people say St. John is his foil.
Oh, I forgot about St. John.
Because remember
Never mind. Never
when
mind.
Jane
Yeah,
gets
yeah.
back and he's all like, "What about this St.
Right.
John?"
Sorry, no, Jane Eyre's not the same vibe at all. Rochester,
Okay.
yes, Rochester's not the only like man, you know,
Yes.
so to speak.
Yes.
Um,
Well, I'm glad we had this therapy session to let you process all of your feelings.
so yeah, so do I like Jane Eyre more or do I like Wuthering Heights more?
I assume
So
it's
it's-
Jane Eyre.
I think I like Wuthering Heights more.
What is going on? What is
Yeah.
happening? So it's not at all this feel-good read, but wow, it's impressive. I mean, it is a masterpiece.
No, it's like wasabi. Right?
Okay.
It's like, you know, if you're having sushi or something else with wasabi, it's fun to get like a really big piece
Mhm.
and then it hurts really bad, but then it stops hurting. And then at the end, you're like, that was cool. I want to do that again.
And that's the blurb I'm going to put at the beginning of the video. Okay, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, David, for reading Wuthering Heights. You endured. You went through it, and
I wasn't so sure.
you weren't so sure. Thank you for watching, and I will be back with another video soon. Bye.